Who doesn't like a good paladin, right? Heavy armor, shields, and swords, the power of the gods in their very hands to heal or to harm. It's a fun time in pretty much any game that it exists in, and fortunately, while it's not a specific job in Final Fantasy Tactics, the game systems do allow you to make your own. That's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel. Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including more specific unit build guides for games like Final Fantasy Tactics, the Ivalice Chronicles, then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Today we're diving more deeply into my Paladin build that has been seeing great success on Tactician mode of the Ivalice Chronicles, which we talked about shortly during my Steal This Squad video that we did yesterday. Say hello to Kedro, everyone! Hi, Kedro! Kedro's been an absolute centerpiece unit for my team in every major battle that I've gone into, and what's cool is while the specific gear that I have on him now needs to wait until Chapter 3, you can get a build like this going as early as Chapter 1, as really all you need is white magic and the night job, and you're already off to the races. So what is the purpose of the Paladin build? The Paladin is meant to stand on the front lines, draw enemy aggro, be nearly invulnerable in melee combat, and then be able to either smite his foes with holy magic or buff up and support himself and his allies using things like Cure, Cura, Protect, Shell, etc. Potentially even tossing in a raise here and there if you don't have a Phoenix Down handy or something equivalent. It's always been a particularly fun build to me in past versions of FFT, but now because enemies are cranked up a fair bit in Tactician and damage is not the most reliable thing, having something that can give you some longevity and tank on the front line suddenly feels a lot more valuable. So with that general overview out of the way, let's talk about the build itself. Near the beginning of Chapter 4, this is where Kedro is currently at. He's wielding a Defender, an Aegis Shield, a Circlet, a Wizard's Robe, and an Elven Cloak. His abilities are Arts of War, of course, as well as White Magics, Parry, Defense Boost, and Movement +1. Obviously, depending on where you're at in the game, what other jobs you've dipped into to pick up different options for support abilities, movement abilities, and the like, you could have different options going on here, but for my progress without an obscene amount of grinding, this is where we're currently at. He's also sitting comfortably at 84 Brave and 80 Faith. I will be continuing to work on both of those till he's eventually at 97 Brave and 84 Faith, and that'll put him in a pretty good spot to be able to do everything that he needs for tanking and for healing. First of all, let's talk about why he has equipped what he has. The beautiful thing about knights in Final Fantasy Tactics is they're actually fairly versatile because they don't need to wear exclusively plate mail. You can actually wear things like robes, which can give you a variety of different beneficial effects from boosted MP to boosted magic attack, potentially even boosting your own holy magic, depending on what it is that you're using. This is very important as some of the best white magic can be pretty pricey in terms of MP, and you want to be able to make sure that you're actually able to cast the spells that you need when you need them. Knights also notoriously not the highest magic attack unit, so having something like a robe that can boost that magic attack for you is lovely and will make your heals that bit more effective. The core of the build rests on the fact that knights are so naturally durable. You could do a support build like this on any variety of other different types of jobs, but knights having the innate ability to wield knight swords, wield shields, have good baseline HP, and then be able to use things like Arts of War to disable and otherwise weaken enemy units on the front line as they're tanking them, means that even if you are wearing a squishy Wizard's Robe, you're still fairly durable on the front line even when you do sometimes take hits. As I mentioned, you don't need to have this level of gear to get this build online. As soon as you unlock Knights, you can basically start running them, even if you're just wielding an iron sword and a hempen robe with a basic bronze shield or something. Like, it doesn't matter, a buckler even, who cares? It'll still fulfill the same role, it'll just get stronger as you get further into the game. For the build as we have it here, this is why we're running what we are. The Defender is the first Night Sword that you can get in the game, and you will be able to get it as soon as you're able to access Chapter 3, because you can poach Elder Trents to get this from the Poacher's Shop. This is something I've talked about in a few previous different videos, so we won't go too in-depth on it here. You can check out my poaching guide for more info if you need it. The Defender itself is phenomenal though, as it does deal very good damage as a Night Sword, they all do, but it has a massive 60% parry rate if you're using it with the parry ability, which is very, very fun. It doesn't have any other special bonus effects or anything like that. It's just a giant hunk of iron that you can hold up in front of yourself to defend yourself. But for this type of build, that's phenomenal. We then have the Aegis Shield, which is a little bit of a more out there choice, as it has a much greater magical parry chance than physical parry chance. It'll still provide a little bit of physical parry, but not nearly as much as any other shield will. The two big aspects to this are the fact that it also raises your magic attack power. We've talked about why that's important for this build is, if you're going to be casting healing magic, you want it to actually do something. but then it also will protect you from magic, which would otherwise be a vulnerability of the job. You see, parry will allow you to block physical attacks perfectly fine. That's what the defender is for. But if something decides to try and drop a flare on you, you want to be able to be in a better position, and the Aegis Shield is what will help you do that. With the combination of these two main hand items, you will be naturally very difficult to take down, and that's before we start incorporating any other accessories or defensive abilities. We then just have a circlet. It's a basic plate helmet, like, that's just what I have available to me. There's certainly far better options that you can get as you progress into the game, especially some options that might actually give you different bonus effects, but right now with where I'm at, it's what I've got. We then have the Wizard's Robe, and as mentioned, this is a very important item as it actually gives us a decent MP pool to work with, and then also does raise our magic attack power by 2, which is very good. It's a generally stat-wise weak item for this point in the game. You can start getting them midway through Chapter 2, but at this point, it is by far the best casting robe that you can have. If you want to go for a more defensive item like, say, a black robe or a white robe because they have higher stats, the white robe even will have fire, ice, and lightning damage, that is certainly an option. You just need to keep in mind that you're not going to be doing as much healing. You can see our magic attack is dropping by 2 by going to equip this item. Even something like the Chameleon Robe could be okay. Grants you immunity to instant KO, not the most common effect, but would be a way that something might try to down this job, so that is nice. And it would allow you to absorb holy damage as well, which is certainly thematic, and could be fun if you have a way to do like AoE holy nukes, but those aren't very common, especially at this point in the game. So you can switch off of something like the Wizard's Robe, but I found that the magic attack boost that it gives and the overall durability of the job in other ways makes it a very solid option. We finally then have the Elven Cloak, and once again, cloaks are pretty much just a linear path. Every once in a while you'll have something like the Mage's Cloak that also gives you magic attack up, but we have enough magic attack at this point, and getting a flat 25% to physical and magical evade with the cloak makes this job even more durable. Eventually I do want to get up to things like Featherweave Cloaks by the end of the game, which I've had experienced in the past in other versions of Final Fantasy Tactics. Gets ridiculous on a build like this. You can scale this up or down, no matter what part of the game that you're in, you'll be able to find gear that suits this. For example, once you're able to get into Midlights Deep and you can get the Lordly Robe, oh boy, getting physical attack and magical attack and good stats, it's a good time. That's part of what I like about this job so much, because it does just scale so well. You can get someone set up in the job, set them and forget them. That's why Kejo here has a whopping almost 5,000 JP to his name, because it doesn't take long to get the job set up, and then you can just rip and let him defend other characters while they get more complicated builds online. Speaking of the other parts of the build, we do of course have Arts of War. It's the Knight ability. You want to get all of the abilities so that no matter what situation you're in, you can potentially rend the relevant thing. Being able to destroy a powerful weapon on a dangerous enemy, cool. Being able to rend their speed or their magic or their MP in case there's like a samurai or a geomancer that you can't block the damage from, well, if you can't kill them outright, you can make it so that they take less turns or they do less damage when they do take their turn. It's a very solid option to have. It's not going to be what you're using a ton, but when it is needed, it is very nice to have. More often, if you're not doing basic attacks, you'll be using your white magics, and Kejo has a decent array here already. Cure, Cura, and Curago, Raise, Arise, Regen to put on yourself can be very nice when you're first running into the fight. Protect and Shell to be able to buff up the whole party. Wall, typically again, cast on yourself to make you even more ridiculously durable. Asuna for important status effects, and then if you feel like bringing the hammer down, Holy. It's a very fun setup. It gives you a lot of different ways you can support either yourself or the team depending on the combat scenario that you're in, with the option to just hit the delete button if and when you need to, and sometimes you will. It is important to keep in mind that without any sort of outside support like Ethers or a Monk to regen MP, if you drop Holy with this item set currently, that's about all you're going to be doing with your magic for the rest of that fight, but it can very often remove a key piece without any major issues, and then of course you can just start swinging your sword around. So when you need to do it, it is viable. We then have parry. Parry is a key part of the build because without it, your defender is not going to be able to parry, but with it, you are very difficult to hit. Now listen, I can already hear there's going to be people who say, just get Shira Hidori, it's better for this build because it's going to be able to give you evasion based off your brave, etc., etc. I totally hear you on that, and that is a very reasonable option to go for by the late game for this build. However, to get to that point, you're going to have to get all the way down to Samurai, which at that point you're going through Knight, you're going through Monk, you're going through Dragoon, and then you have to get the amount of JP to unlock it. It can be done, but the nice thing about parry is it does come from the job job that you're going to be in. So until you're ready to go and get that set up, if you don't feel like doing a bunch of grinding as you progress through the game, then parry will be there for you. Now, I do recommend going to get Shira Hidori eventually, because you will probably at some point want to put a better Knight Sword on that gives you a beneficial effect. A Save the Queen, for example, or an Excalibur to boost your holy and give you haste. There are good options for this that I just don't have access to at this point in the game. Once you do, getting Shira Hidori so you still have that evade is definitely a good option. We then do have defense boost. Again, depending on what defensive options you have, you may want to swap this for things like, say, magic defense boost or the like. But as of right now, if you wind up missing your parry or something gets you from behind or something along those lines, then having defense boost that you take less damage is definitely a nice option. Dipping into Mystic, getting magic defense boost, or maybe even going for something else defensive is certainly a solid option. This, again, is a very versatile job that you can build from as you get further into the game. And then same thing for movement +1. If eventually you want to dip into Thief to get movement +2, Time Mage for teleport, you have options for your movement ability. But right now, as it is, for base move, pretty okay for something that's just going to go sit on the front line and absorb hits. Also, correction, I said Mystic for magic defense boost. It is White Mage that gives you magic defense boost. I always get them reversed in my head. But either way, you can pick that up and maybe even swap it on the fly for different combat scenarios that you're going to find yourself in. So with the general idea of the build, an example of the equipment and abilities you'll have later into the game out of the way, what's going to be the quickest way to get this online in terms of your progression through various different jobs? You're, of course, going to start in Squire. You're going to get your basics, your fundaments, your throwstone, your move +1, your JP boost, etc., etc. Get that all out of the way. You're then going to need to dip into Chemist long enough that you unlock White Mage. Fortunately, that does not take very long at all. You only need to get to a level 2 Chemist to unlock White Mage, so that's quite simple. You can then do one of two things. You can either go right into White Mage to get your various different magics that you want unlocked, maybe then go into Mystic if you're going to get defense boost, or you can go directly into Knight and start mastering that. It doesn't matter too much which way you go first, because at the end of the day, the stats that you're going to gain in either class really won't be huge. You're not going to be in them for that long. You're going to be ending in Knights. You'll be getting your Knight growths for the rest of the game. If you decide that you want to start dipping into other jobs to get different reaction abilities, again, like Shira Hidori on Samurai, then you can do that. But I mean, once you've gotten your defense boost for Mystic, you're pretty much just in Knight and White Mage for all the abilities that you could possibly want for this setup. Parry comes from Knight. Magic defense boost comes from White Mage. Move +1 you should already have because you were in Squire, and then you can always jump down to Thief through Archer if you really want to get move +2. In fact, I can do that for him right now, so look at that. There you go. Now he's got movement +2. And that's the nice thing about the spillover mechanic, is eventually you'll just get access to these abilities without even needing to necessarily dip into the job for any significant length of time. That's part of why I like this build so much. It is so very easy to get online and then just continue to upgrade without having to go all over the shop of all the different jobs. Like, well, we're going to go into Time Mage so we can get Swiftness, but then I want to get Mana Font from like Mystic, or then so I can have more mana that I'm getting back, but then like I need to spend plenty of time in White Mage so that I have all my white magic. Also, I need to make sure that I'm mastering everything from Knight. But what if I want to then go down to Samurai to get Shira Hidori? Like, some builds like that to optimize could take quite a while to get to. But if you just want a dude who can stand on the front line and do support, you got it, and without very much jumping between jobs. And I can tell you, on modes like Tactician, where you do need to pay a lot more attention to avoiding damage and making sure that you can protect allies who can't avoid it for themselves, it's a very strong option to have. And that's the build. Do please let me know if you have any critiques or thoughts, things that you would do or add or change for different phases of the game. How would you make this work in the early game? How would you max it out by the late game? What abilities would you maybe swap out, or how would you change the playstyle to get an equivalent build, but maybe not the same in terms of how it's actually set up? There's a lot of different ways you can customize characters in Final Fantasy Tactics, and I think Tactician has opened us up to a lot of different ways to play that are more viable now, because just raw damage isn't as good and survivability is definitely not as good. I'll absolutely be doing more videos like this about builds that I discover to be good in the mode, as well as just what some of the top tier stuff is, especially if it's unchanged from other versions of the game. I love talking about builds. I love talking about the way you can actually kit out different characters, especially in interesting ways that aren't necessarily meta but still functional and a lot of fun. I think that's always the most interesting thing to do. And if you have a particular setup that you would like me to cover, whether it be from my current roster of characters or something that you're just curious about, let me know and I'll do my best to do so. Until the next time though, my name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there, everybody. And remember, be good to each other, y'all. Bye now.